Oh, darlings, imagine if your Tinder date ended not with a ghosting, but with a beheading. Welcome to Sweden's so-called Great Power era, where passion wasn't just fiery, it was literally set ablaze at the stake. Back in 1611-1721, when Sweden was strutting across Europe like a peacock in armor, their sexual escapades made today's scandals look like a polite tea party. Who knew building an empire involved so much intimate demolition? If this tickles your forbidden fancies, smash that subscribe button like a Swedish hammer on a heretic's skull. Tell me in the comments, where are you tuning in from, and is it dawn or dusk where your secrets simmer? Ah, my delectable audience, gather round as if we are huddled in the shadowy corners of a Stockholm tavern, whispering over tankards of mead about the juiciest tidbits from Sweden's Stormokt Stiden, that grand, bombastic era from 1611 to 1721, when the Swedes weren't just conquering lands, but apparently wrestling with their own libidos in ways that would make even the most jaded Regency rake blush. Picture it, Gustavus Adolphus thundering across battlefields, Queen Christina flouting every convention like a petticoat in a gale, all while the common folk navigated a minefield of desires that could land them in the executioner's embrace. But oh, the gruesomeness! We're not talking mere slaps on the wrist or tawdry divorces. No, these were practices laced with iron, fire, and a healthy dose of holy hypocrisy. Allow me, your humble narrator, in the style of those deliciously scandalous pamphlets that once fluttered through European courts like forbidden love letters, to unveil the dark underbelly of Swedish sexuality. Think Lady Whistledown meets a grim fairy tale, with modern parallels that'll have you checking your own browser history. Let us commence with the bedrock of it all, the laws, those stern, unyielding guardians of virtue that turned bedrooms into battlegrounds. In early modern Sweden, the church and crown held hands in a vice grip over matters of the flesh, drawing from medieval codes that evolved into something positively draconian by the 17th century. Adultery, my dears, not just a faux pas at a ball, but a capital offense that could see you swinging from the gallows or worse. Imagine a husband discovering his wife's dalliance not with a duel or a discreet settlement, but with a public trial where the adulterers were paraded like exhibits in a macabre museum. The 1608 Law Code, just before our era kicks off, sharpened the blade on such matters, prescribing death for repeat offenders or those caught in flagrante delicto. It's like if today's cheating apps came with a built-in guillotine feature. Swipe right, lose your head. But oh, the irony drips thicker than lingonberry sauce when we delve into sodomy and homosexuality. You see, prior to the full-throated prohibitions, the provincial laws were curiously mum on same-sex romps, treating them more as ecclesiastical sins than state crimes. Yet by the Great Power days, under the influence of Lutheran zealots who viewed anything non-procreative as a slap to God's face, sodomy, often bundled with bestiality in the legal lexicon, became a ticket to the pyre. Picture this. Two gentlemen, perhaps soldiers fresh from the 30 Years' War, sharing a tent and a moment of tenderness amid the cannon fire. Caught, they'd be tried under codes that equated their love to heresy, with punishments that make modern conversion therapy look like a spa day. Beheading followed by burning to purge the soul and scandalize the spectators. And here's a witty twist. Sweden's laws were imported from broader European trends, much like how we borrow Netflix shows today, but with far deadlier plot twists.
One pamphlet from the era, whispered about in courts, likens such acts to dancing with the devil in breeches, a sarcastic nod to how the elite often escaped while peasants paid the price. Now, brace yourselves for the truly gruesome pièce de résistance, bestiality, that rural taboo that flourished in the isolated farms of Scandinavia's vast wilderness. In a land where long winters meant close quarters with livestock, temptations arose that the law met with unyielding fury. The 1734 Code, echoing earlier sentiments from our period, decreed that anyone caught in carnal congress with cattle or other dumb animals should be beheaded and then burned at the stake, along with the poor beast, mind you, as if the cow had any say in the matter. But rewind to the 1600s, and you'll find roots in the 1442 laws, amplified during the empire's height. Court records from the era paint a picture of desperate farmers, perhaps addled by famine or isolation, facing trials that were equal parts spectacle and horror. Imagine the gossip rippling through villages like a Regency ballroom murmur. Did you hear about old Lars and his mare? The magistrates calling for the axe. Executions were public affairs designed to deter with their brutality. Heads rolling, bodies aflame, a scent of charred flesh mingling with the crowd's horrified gasps. Modern comparison? It's akin to those viral animal rescue videos, but inverted into a nightmare where the human-animal bond leads straight to the bonfire. And the irony? While the crown preached purity, kings like Charles X Gustav turned a blind eye to their own indiscretions, much like today's politicians tweeting about family values while hiding mistresses in plain sight. Speaking of royal hypocrisies, let's tiptoe into the court's shadowy alcoves, where sexual practices weren't just gruesome, but gilded with intrigue. Gustavus Adolphus, that lion of the north, roared on battlefields, but purred in private with mistresses like Margareta Slotz, who bore him an illegitimate son amid whispers of passion that rivaled any soap opera. Yet the gruesomeness lurked in the consequences. Unwanted pregnancies led to unwanted abortions or abandonments, procedures as risky as a duel at dawn, often involving herbal poisons that could twist a woman's innards like a knotted rope. Pamphlets circulated, sarcastically dubbing these the king's little conquests, a witty jab at how empire building extended to the bedroom. And then there's the folk practices, those gruesome rituals born of superstition. In rural Sweden, fertility rites sometimes veered into the macabre, bloodletting or animal sacrifices to invoke virility, echoing pagan echoes in a Christian land. One account from the era speaks of couples smearing themselves with goat blood under the full moon, a practice that sounds like a bad date night in a horror flick, but was deadly serious when discovered by the church inquisitors. But wait, my scandal-hungry friends, the true horror unfolded in the punishments, where justice was as creative as it was cruel. For adultery, if death was spared, public whippings or pillory stints awaited, where the guilty were pelted with rotten produce while villagers jeered like an audience at a comedy roast gone wrong. Sodomy cases, rare but riveting in records, often ended in castration before execution, a gruesome emasculation that symbolized the stripping of manhood, much like how social media cancels someone today, but with actual blades. Bestiality trials were festivals of revulsion, with the animal slaughtered first in a ritualistic prelude, its body displayed as evidence. Irony abounds. Sweden, priding itself on enlightened absolutism under Charles XI, enforced these with a bureaucratic zeal that would make a DMV clerk proud. Modern parallels? Think of it as the original cancel culture, where one wrong thrust could erase your existence, all while the elite frolicked unscathed. And let's not forget the gender disparities, for the gruesomeness hit women hardest. Accused adulteresses faced stoning or drowning in some archaic holdovers. Their bodies waited like anchors in the Baltic Sea, a watery grave that whispered of patriarchal control. Gossip pamphlets, those precursors to tabloids, sensationalized these tales with woodcuts depicting writhing sinners, adding a layer of voyeuristic irony, condemning while titillating. In this era, sex was a weapon, a sin, a spectacle, woven into the fabric of empire like threads in a tapestry of terror. So, as we bid adieu to these fiery fornications and beastly bonds, remember, in Sweden's great age, love could literally burn you alive. Tune in next for the witchy orgies that turned accusations into executions, because, darling, the devil's in the details. Picture your worst Zoom call nightmare, but instead of awkward silences, it's children accusing grannies of devilish dalliances. Yes, dears, in Sweden's empire days, witch hunts weren't just hunts, they were full-blown sex scandals with satanic flair. If today's conspiracy theories had pitchforks and pyres, they'd look like this: gruesome, gossipy, and utterly... Oh, my bewitching listeners, how delightful to reconvene in this virtual salon of scandals, where we peel back the layers of Sweden's great power era like onion skins from a potion brew. From 1611 to 1721, as the kingdom flexed its muscles across the Baltic, a darker flex was afoot. The witch trials, those hysterical pageants of paranoia that turned sexual fantasies into fatal accusations. Think Regency gossip sheets meets the Inquisition with a dash of modern QAnon for flavor. Sarcastic whispers of pacts sealed in passion, orgies under the northern lights, all narrated in pamphlets that spread faster than a viral tweet. The gruesomeness? Not mere broomstick rides, but beheadings, burnings, and a societal frenzy that claimed hundreds, often laced with lurid tales of carnal congress with the Horned One himself. Irony alert, while Sweden touted its Protestant purity, these trials exposed an undercurrent of repressed desires, projected onto the vulnerable like shadows in a candlelit boudoir. The spark ignited in the late 1660s during the Great Noise, a wave of hysteria that swept from Dalarna to the coasts, peaking in 1668 to 1676, with over 300 accused and 230 executed. But oh, the sexual underbelly! Accusations weren't just about spells or spoiled milk, they delved into the diabolical bedroom. Women, and sometimes men, were charged with fornicating with Satan, described in court records as a cloven-hoofed lover who promised power in exchange for pleasure. Imagine the testimony. A child witness, coerced like a Regency debutante into a bad match, recounting how Aunt Ingrid whisked them to Blockula, that mythical witches' sabbath, for orgies that would make Caligula envious. Pamphlets buzzed with details, naked dances, inverted crosses, and couplings that blurred human and infernal lines. It's like if 50 Shades met The Exorcist, but with real stakes, pun intended. Take the Torsåker witch trials of 1675, the gruesome pinnacle. 71 souls, mostly women, beheaded in a single day, their bodies burned in a mass pyre that lit the sky like an infernal bonfire party. The accusations? Steeped in sexuality. Children claimed the witches abducted them for satanic sex rites, forcing innocent participation in acts that twisted childhood into nightmare fuel. One ironic twist, the priests leading the hunts, like Laurentius Hornius, used water ordeals to test guilt, dunking suspects in icy lakes where floating meant devil's buoyancy and death, sinking meant innocence, but often drowning. Modern comparison? It's akin to deep-fake porn scandals, where fabricated filth ruins lives. But here, the fabrications led to axes falling like judgmental guillotines.
Gossip swirled in the courts, where testimonies painted vivid, gruesome pictures. Witches allegedly smeared with ointments for flight, but also for arousal, leading to group ravishments that echoed pagan fertility rites suppressed by Christianity. Men accused of sodomy with demons faced double jeopardy, sexual deviance plus sorcery, punished by castration before the chop, and emasculation as symbolic as it was savage. Pamphlets, those witty harbingers of hype, sarcastically dubbed these the devil's balls, mocking the elite who escaped while peasants perished. And the women, often midwives or healers, their knowledge of bodies twisted into evidence of carnal pacts, their executions a gruesome spectacle where heads rolled into baskets, blood soaking the snow like spilled wine at a disastrous soiree. But let's not overlook the broader gruesomeness, the trial's ripple effects on sexual practices. Fear bred repression, couples shunned experimentation, lest a moan be mistaken for incantation. Yet irony abounds. The hysteria revealed a fascination with the forbidden, as crowds flocked to executions like theater-goers, titillated by the tales. In Finland, under Swedish rule, similar panics unfolded, with accusations of bestial acts with forest spirits, blending folklore with felony. One account from Ångermanland speaks of a woman burned for allegedly birthing devil's spawn after a spectral tryst. Gruesome births involving forceps in flames, a far cry from today's birthing classes. The Crown's role? Ambivalent at best. Charles XI, that austere absolutist, eventually curbed the excesses in 1676, but not before the body count mounted. It's like a government inquiry into a scandal, arriving after the damage, with sarcastic edicts proclaiming, "Enough of this witchery nonsense." Modern parallels? Think McCarthyism with a sexual twist, where red scares become bed scares, rooting out deviance with gruesome efficiency. In this cauldron of cruelty, sexual practices morphed into survival strategies, chastity belts metaphorical, whispers of desire quashed under fear's boot. Yet the pamphlets persisted, witty missives that poked fun at the absurdity, comparing witches' flights to lovers' elopements gone awry. Gruesome, yes, but a mirror to society's shadows. As the smoke clears from these satanic soirees, chuckle at the irony. Sweden's witches burned brighter than their empire's stars. Next time, we'll march into war's wanton wreckage, where soldiers' swords weren't the only weapons unsheathed. Darling, if you thought modern dating apps were a battlefield, spare a thought for the 30 Years' War, where Swedish troops turned conquest into carnal carnage. From 1618 to 1648, as Sweden's lions roared across Europe, their gruesome practices made pillow talk sound like a lullaby. Rape, pillage, and a side of sarcasm. Anyone? My valiant voyeurs, let's saddle up for another gallop through Sweden's great power era, where the clank of armor masked moans of misery. In the 30 Years' War, 1618 to 1648, Sweden, under Gustavus Adolphus, burst onto the stage like a diva with a death wish, but beneath the glory lay gruesome sexual practices that turned battlefields into boudoirs of brutality. Picture Regency balls gone barbaric, soldiers, mercenaries in tow, unleashing violences that pamphlets decried with witty venom, comparing rapine to the king's uninvited guests at a feast. Irony? While Sweden preached Protestant piety, their armies practiced pagan plunder, with modern echoes in every war crime tribunal. The gruesomeness began with the sackings. Cities like Magdeburg in 1631, though imperial-led, set the tone that Swedes emulated. Swedish forces, initially disciplined, devolved into marauders, raping civilians as spoils. Accounts whisper of women dragged from homes, violated in streets amid flames, their screams drowned by laughter. One pamphlet sarcastically quipped, "The lion of the north devours more than lands, virgins too." Modern comparison, like drone strikes with a personal touch, where occupation breeds outrage. Gang rapes were rife, soldiers queuing like suitors at a debutante store, but with blades instead of bouquets. Children and elders weren't spared, adding layers of horror that make slasher films seem tame. In Polish campaigns, Swedish troops enforced contributions via violation, a gruesome tax on bodies. Irony abounds. Gustavus's Snow King melted morals, his death at Lutzen in 1632 leaving a legacy of lustful legions. Pamphlets circulated, gossiping about atrocities like the ravaging of Brandenburg, where women hid in attics only to be hunted like game. Punishments for soldiers? Rare, as commanders turned blind eyes, much like corporate cover-ups today. The war's end at Westphalia brought indemnity, but not for the violated. Scars lingered like ghosts at a seance. In Swedish-held territories, forced concubinage emerged, women as war wives in a gruesome parody of marriage. Diseases spread, turning passion into plague. Witty chroniclers noted the Swedes brought steel and syphilis, gifts that keep on giving. This era's sexual practices? War twisted them into weapons, with irony in how empire's greatness rested on gruesomeness. As the cannon smoke dissipates, ponder this. Sweden's warriors conquered continents but lost their souls in sheets. Stay tuned for court capers, where queens queered the pitch with scandals supreme. Finally, dears, the crown jewels of gruesomeness, Swedish court intrigues, where bedsheets hid more daggers than diplomacy. From Gustavus's mistresses to Christina's sapphic sparks, it's like a Regency romance scripted by the Marquis de Sade. shocking, sarcastic, and splendidly scandalous. Ah, my courtly confidants, we've arrived at the opulent apex of our tour through Sweden's Stormaktiden, the royal bedchambers, where gruesome sexual practices donned silk and scheming. From 1611 to 1721, monarchs like Gustavus Adolphus and Queen Christina turned thrones into trysting grounds, their escapades fodder for pamphlets that dripped with witty disdain, likening kings to horny Hercules. Irony? While peasants burned for peccadillos, royals romped with impunity, a double standard sharper than a stiletto. Gustavus Adolphus, that battlefield behemoth, kept a private zoo of passions. His mistress Ebba Brahe, a court lady, sparked scandals with love letters that could melt armor, gruesome in fallout, as jealousies led to duels and deaths. Another, Margarita Slotz, bore his bastard son amid whispers of poison plots from rivals. Modern comparison, like a CEO's affair exploding on LinkedIn, but with beheadings.
Then the star, Queen Christina, reigning 1632 to 1654, a gender-bending enigma whose sexuality scandalized Europe. Rumored lesbian, her affair with Ebba Spar, Belle, involved passionate letters calling her my heart's wife. Christina dressed as a man, refused marriage, and abdicated in 1654, converting to Catholicism amid gasps. Pamphlets sarcastically dubbed her the Amazon Queen, hinting at sapphic orgies. Gruesome twist? Her execution of advisor Monaldeschi in 1657, stabbed repeatedly, perhaps jealousy-fueled. Modern comparison? A queer icon like Elton John, but with papal drama. Charles X's Gustav's court buzzed with mistresses, his conquests mirroring military ones, gruesome abortions and abandoned offspring. Charles XI's reign was tamer, but whispers of illicit hunts added spice. Ulrika Eleonora and Frederick I closed the era with tepid scandals, but the legacy? Royals' gruesomeness in exploiting power for pleasure, irony in their divine right to debauchery. Thus ends our empire of Eros, where crowns concealed cravings. Remember, history's gruesomest practices prove power corrupts, but passion incinerates.